So, I work at National Advocates for Pregnant Women, and it may not be obvious why I would be here. A lot of the cases we get work at the intersection of the war on drugs and the effort to recriminalize abortion. And I know people have a lot of strong feelings about both. Both of those things are interesting. The war on drugs prohibits people from doing what they naturally do, which is sometimes use drugs. And no amount of prohibition of alcohol or drugs works. And when you criminalize abortion, however you may feel about it, women still have abortions. And so what's the purpose of these laws that don't work? The purpose is to control certain populations, to give the state the power to control certain populations. And in the area of reproduction, to exercise population control.
That's right.
Certain people should have children, other people shouldn't. People get access to health care, people don't. And where it comes together is in cases like Britta Smith in Virginia. Became pregnant, she knew she had a problem with cocaine, she called every program in the yellow pages, and every one of them said, we will not take you because you're pregnant, or you go on the waiting list for treatment because you rely on public benefits. There was no waiting list to be charged for the crime of child abuse. So you take the abortion recriminalization notion that the unborn ought to have separate independent rights, and you combine it with the drug war, and you get a court to say that anything a pregnant woman does or doesn't do is child abuse. And if by coincidence she suffers a stillbirth or a miscarriage, that's murder. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the doors to all of those places where they put people behind bars is not thrown open further by the recriminalization of pregnant women, all pregnant women. And it's not just the criminal justice system, it's the child welfare system that is judging motherhood by what mothers put into their bodies rather than by what they put into their families and their communities. And we have to change that. We cannot tell how somebody parents by what is in the urine cup they're forced to pee into. And yet every single day in family courts in New York State and New York City, it is decided who can be with the children they love and care about and who can't based on what's in a urine cup. And if I peed in a cup today, it could not tell you one thing about how I feel about my children. Now, I've led an enormously privileged life, but I want to connect to explain partly why I do what I do. I was observing at family drug court, and was with a colleague. And there was a case where a woman was trying to get custody of her kid back. She'd never hurt that child. She'd been raising it from birth, but actually was not the biological parent. And when she went to get guardianship so she could make sure she could do everything this kid needed, she had a record involving drugs. So they made her pee in a cup. And because she was positive, not because she hurt that child, hadn't raised that child, hadn't done everything she could, they took that kid away. And I was there to hear whether she could have that child back for the weekends. And they weren't, they did in the end, but they first weren't going to give it back because there was a discrepancy of one day about whether she had missed treatment or not. That was why they weren't going to give her kid back. And all day long they were talking about her dirty and clean, this person dirty and clean, all day long. And I started to get crazy. And I thought, they're not talking about me. What's this about? And I remembered in the 4th grade when Patty leaned over and called me a dirty Jew. And I understood that when we divide people into clean and dirty, that's how Hitler made it possible to kill the Jews. They were dirty. When you can tell certain people and certain mothers that they are dirty, not that they are people who do what they need to do to survive, then you can hurt them. I want to end by saying 2 things. One is the drug czar just had an article of defending the war on drugs, though he says it should be public health. And what did he cite? He said, drug use is not a victimless crime because I've seen newborns tragically harmed by drug use. This is the same junk science that launched the war on motherhood through the claim of harmed babies who were harmed by poverty, far more than any drugs their mothers took. Can't allow, how many of you saw those signs that went up or heard about them, the most dangerous place for an African-American child? 61% of women who have abortions are already mothers. 84% of women of all races become mothers. The most dangerous place for children is not in their mother's wombs, it's in a society that does not recognize their human rights. That's right. Women works to make sure we really do have a culture of life, something you cannot have if you don't value all the women who give that life.